This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
It's the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echoes. The Reds prepare for the 237th Merseyside derby. Reds v Blues, Klopp v Ancelotti, champions v leaders. I'm Guy Clarke. Welcome along as we get set to talk all things Merseyside derby. Plus, with today marking the domestic transfer deadline, we'll look at which Reds could be off to pastures new. And as ever, we'll finish with our team selections and our match predictions. Alongside for all of that, our Liverpool correspondent Paul Gorst, Ian Doyle and Matt Addison. Gentlemen, how's the international break treated all of us?
It's been a crazy one, hasn't it? When you think back to the fact that Liverpool getting beat 7-2 against Aston Villa wasn't even 2 weeks ago. And in that time, you've had Project Big Picture Restart or whatever they're calling it at the moment. The £15 to watch your team play on box office on top of your Sky and your BT and everything else that's gone on politically with the lockdown on Merseyside and the Liverpool City region, as we all seem to be calling it nowadays. It's just been a really strange 2 weeks, and I for one, I'm just glad that the football's back to kind of take our minds off the madness to an extent.
Yeah, that is the thing, I suppose, Doyle. We've gone into the real world where we've been locked down and told we're going to have to pay £15 per match of football we want to watch. Obviously, Liverpool not too heavily punished and affected with that for this round of fixtures. But as Gorsty said, it does seem to feel like it's been a long 2 weeks since that defeat to Aston Villa.
Well, I had 5 days off, so it was great for me. So that's all I was bothered about. No, not bothered about the rest, to be honest.
And Matt, how's it treated you?
Yeah, I'm glad it's all over. We always are, aren't we? It's only 4 weeks until the next one as well, so something else to look forward to.
So the big question, then we'll kick it straight off after that defeat to Aston Villa. Gorsty, come to you first on this and all have our say on it. This game with Everton, the Merseyside derby, is it perfect timing or not the time you want to come up against the league leaders as it is?
You can make a case for both, can't you? But I think it's probably a good thing. I know Klopp said pretty much immediately after the Villa result that the only thing he was most disappointed about was he couldn't get the team in into Melwood on the Monday and kind of crack on and try to put this right. So he's had them coming back in dribs and drabs for most of the week. I'm sure Roberto Firmino hasn't trained as of yet, but pretty much most of them have, if they're not injured. So Thiago and Mane obviously back in. Jordan Henderson from England duty. Will he have trained yesterday? I think he did he? And a lot of times Alexander-Arnold did, so I'm guessing Henderson will have as well. So I think it's probably a good thing that Liverpool are kind of thrown into such a high-profile fixture. Everton, obviously it's 10 years to the day tomorrow since Everton last won a Merseyside derby, but they will never have felt that they'll have had a better chance than tomorrow, apart from January's FA Cup when Liverpool played a load of kids but still managed to beat them. So I think Liverpool know that they need a response. They need to kind of pull up the bootstraps and put in a performance, and there's no better team to do that against than your local rivals. So I think probably from that point of view, it's a good thing that it is such a big game coming so soon after that incredible shock at Aston Villa.
One of those, Doyle, isn't it? Form goes out the window for the derby.
Well, it doesn't, does it? It's a great myth. It doesn't at all. That really is. You look at the last. Why do you think Everton haven't won for 10 years? Because they haven't got any form with the derby. That's why it's happened. So I don't believe that, which obviously then leads you to believe that Everton are going to win on Saturday. And to be perfectly honest, if they can't do it now, you do wonder when they're going to do it. But then we've said that so many times. Said it in January. Said this was Everton's time to win a derby. They couldn't win it then. So interestingly, I'm sure we'll get on to all of the ins and outs of the team. But one of Liverpool's best players that afternoon was Adrian, who made loads of dead good saves. So it will be interesting to see what happens. But in terms of the derby, it's never a good time to play a derby because they're terrible. They are the worst games possible. Anybody who's, I know sometimes that's not quite what people want to hear sometimes. But if you're from the city or around the city and you've been to, a fair amount of it, I won't tell you how many I've been to, but they're absolutely the worst games. You just want them to be over with. I mean, ideally, I've got to say, the ideal derby is 0-0 when nothing happens, which is, to be fair, is what it's been at Everton for about the past 3 years. So, I'd be amazed if that's what happens on Saturday. But yeah, just looking at it, I just think the 7-2 was that long ago. Now it feels like, as Gorsty said, it felt like it was about 50 years ago, let alone 15 days. In fact, it's not even that, is it? What, 12? So it'll be 13 by the time they play. So I don't think it'll have any impact on the game, to be honest. But what will have an impact is the fact that Everton are playing with confidence and they've won 7 games in a row. And was it 125 years since the last time they did that from the start of the season? And I think it's been 51 years since they did it from the start of a top-flight season, and they won the league that year. So all the pressure's on Everton. Can they cope with it?
Yeah, the pressure, I suppose, is on Everton. You say you lost count of how many derbies you've been to. This is the, 237th, so you've probably been to a good 200 of them, I would guess.
Yeah, I actually think it's something like 63 or so or something like that. It's a lot. It's a quarter of them. How old am I? Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move on. Matt, on that topic then, whether it is the right time for the derby, if it's a good time for Liverpool. As Gorsty sort of alluded to, I think if it had been straight after the derby, it would have been ideal placing. But other than that, the derbies just fall as and when they do.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a difficult one to predict, isn't it? Because there's no fans. Obviously, Liverpool have come off an unprecedented result. It's come off the back of an international break. We don't know quite how fit the players like Mane and Thiago, who are on their way back, are going to be. There's just so many different variables to take into it, isn't there? I mean, for me, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking it's either going to be 0-0 or it's going to be 5-4. It's going to be one of those two extremes where it's just, the same as what it has been, or it's going to be an absolutely crazy game that we've seen a few times over the first couple of fixtures of this season. So it's a really impossible one, really, to sort of judge and think what might happen. It's going to be really interesting to see how Everton play it. Obviously, going into it, they've been playing really well. They've been scoring goals, Calvert-Lewin and James Rodriguez in particular, really, really effective. But, will they come out and play Liverpool almost at their own game, or will they go a little bit more conservative and sit in as we've seen them do in the past? I think that's a pretty big dilemma for them to sort of think about. And I suppose without fans, you could argue that it helps them in the fact that if they wanted to go defensive, they could possibly do that. Certainly, if Goodison Park was full, they certainly wouldn't be able to, given the form of the two teams going into it. But yeah, it's just an impossible one to predict. Really, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, Stephen Hansbury has got in touch with us on Facebook. Says the Reds will bring the Toffees crashing down. Doyle, looking at it I suppose 3 weeks ago, Man City had lost at home to Leicester City. We're all proclaiming how it's just a march towards the title for Liverpool. They lose to Aston Villa. And then I get Derby week obviously brings up the nerves. But then all the talk around this, as you said before, it's probably the best time Everton are going to get to have a derby. Is that really the case, or are we expecting Liverpool to, maybe, as Matt said, come out and really sort of try and show what they're all about?
Well, Liverpool just lost the last game 7-2, and Everton have won 7 in a row. So yeah, I would imagine that is probably Everton's best time to play. It would have been better for Everton if they played them something like 3 days after the Aston Villa game. But I think the fact that it's international break, players have been away. I know Klopp said at his press conference today, he said that look, Everton are in the same situation. He was Mina, Rodriguez, Richarlison. I'm not sure if there's anybody else who've been out over in South America, whereas Liverpool have had Fabinho and Firmino. So it will be interesting to see who they make the call with, and we'll get onto the team later on. But Klopp's got a lot of selection, not issues, but he's got decisions to make. And the fact is that whatever he does, the players can't complain because the last team lost 7-2 to Aston Villa. So if ever there's a game where he can make changes, it's this one. And it will be interesting to see what he does. But you'd have to say, Everton are the runaway leaders at the moment, 3 points clear after 4 games. It's not often that happens. The fact that you've seen Chelsea lose to Liverpool, Arsenal lose to Liverpool, City, as you say, got beaten, drew with Leeds, Tottenham, they got beat by Everton, United obviously got beat by Tottenham, and Crystal Palace. So all the leading teams have lost games. So it's going to be, I think it's just going to be this way for a while, to be honest.
Paul, how would you like to see Jurgen Klopp approach this one then? Because obviously, in terms of squad selection, Sadio Mane, Thiago Alcantara, and Joel Matip all back in training this week for Liverpool. Does he change it much, or does he, by and large, stick with the squad that were humbled by Aston Villa and say, you guys got us into this mess, you need to go and put it right? You're on mute, Paul.
I think Jordan Henderson's an absolute must, isn't he? As is, of course, Sadio Mane, and Thiago is an interesting one. I actually was thinking at the beginning of the week that I wouldn't be minded to throw him in, because I just think he hasn't really had too much in the way of training. He's only played 45 minutes so far this season. And of course, he's obviously was a positive test for COVID-19. So I was a little bit torn on that. And then the more I thought about it during the week, I'm thinking, just put him on, just throw him in and see how he goes, because he's a fascinating player to watch. I think he's going to be an exceptional player for the long term at Liverpool. So just throw him into the thick of it. I think I've changed my mind on that a little bit. And I think the big one is Matip. How fit is he? Because I think Joe Gomez has been below par last couple of weeks. So it's a question of how fit Matip is. He obviously hasn't. I don't think he's played, has he, since the Everton game back in June. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with those two. But other than that, I think it's pretty much as you were. The Liverpool team doesn't seem to chop and change too much, does it? It's obviously just got to kind of tweak the game plan slightly with the goalkeeper that they have in. But other than that, thinking 2 changes definitely, maybe a third with Thiago and maybe a fourth with Matip.
Yeah, we'll get into the team selection in more depth in a bit. Matt, I suppose the derby is always a pressure cooker environment, and for Everton, they come in with such strong form, and for Liverpool off the back of that result, who do you think more pressure is maybe on as these two sides obviously get ready to play it out at Goodison?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think probably the pressure is more on Liverpool to bounce back after such a strange result. I think Everton at this stage, even if they were to lose the derby, you'd look at 4 wins from the first 5 games. That would be, a very good return for them. I think for Liverpool, I think more eyes will be on them, because you wonder what would get said if off the back of a 7-2 defeat, they were then to lose the first derby in 10 years. I think it sort of starts to build up a little bit of a narrative. I'm not necessarily saying that would be true or would be the correct way of people thinking about it, but you can imagine that that sort of topic would come up of Liverpool's form and are they doing the right things with loads of matches to come up. I just think it's probably more important for Liverpool. And to be honest, I think in every derby there is pressure on both teams, but in every single football match, the pressure really should be on whichever team is better. And I think if Liverpool and Everton both play at their best, we know which team is the better of those two. So I think that the pressure is probably always on Liverpool in any match, but particularly in derbies, to show what they're made of. And as I said, look, if Liverpool do get back to the form and play the way that we know that they can play, they will win that match. It's just a case of whether that is the case and whether they can bounce back quickly.
Yeah, so we've alluded to it then, it being on Saturday, exactly 10 years since Everton did last win a derby. Of course, that did come at Goodison Park. Doyle, you've been at so many of these games, and I think 4 of the last 5 as it is have finished goalless. What is it about the derby? Why is it that certainly in recent times it's been such a stalemate at Goodison?
Well, I think it's predominantly because Everton don't want to lose. That'll be it. I mean, they have had games in the past, we're talking in the distant past, where they've gone for it and got, not got absolutely slaughtered, but they've lost to a team where I spoke to John Barnes yesterday, and he was saying that the lack of fans, which I'm sure we've mentioned quite a few times on these podcasts, he says that the lack of fans will help Everton because they'll be allowed to play their defensive game not as normal, but certainly in a derby. And the crowd won't be there to kind of encourage them to go forward. They can just play the game that they want to play without any pressure from anybody inside the stadium. And to a certain degree, that's what Aston Villa did against Liverpool, but were able to just massively just profit from the fact that Liverpool had an off day and just ran through the middle all the time. So I think, the pressure's on Liverpool, but I think the expectation is with Everton. And Everton have, in the past, struggled with expectation. It's partly the reason why they haven't won a trophy for, 25 years. And why people are just waiting to see what happens with them at the leading the table the way that they are. I mean, I think a lot of people are surprised, but when you look at the games that they've played, nearly all of them have been games where you'd expect them to win. This perhaps is one where they're not. So in that sense, it's going to be a game where Carlo Ancelotti will be very important because he'll know what tactics need to be played. He's got a decent enough record against Jurgen Klopp from his days with Napoli. And I think that I would expect Everton to play a defensive game, and I would expect Liverpool to have to be on their guard because it might not be quite as defensive as it has been in past years at Goodison. You've also got to bear in mind that Liverpool going to Goodison certainly they've not always had the best team out. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I think you look at the derbies. I've written this piece loads of times actually that Firmino, Salah, and Mane have never ever started a derby as a front three, which is incredible given the fact that they've been together for just over 3 years now, and Liverpool and Everton have played each other 8 times in that. But it always seems to be a game where Jurgen Klopp does something a bit strange with his team selection. Whether he does that on Saturday, I don't know. But again, as I said, Everton, there'll be more onus on Everton than there normally is. And I also think the fact this 10 years thing as well, but they'll probably think, we've got a chance here. And whether or not that plays into Liverpool's hands, I don't know. Again, it'll be on the day who's the more tactically disciplined, because I think if you just go on pure talent, Liverpool have got a better team. But Everton's team is a lot better than it was last season.
Yeah, good point. Pick up on the point about the obviously empty stadium, and Jurgen Klopp was asked about that, Paul, in the pre-match press conference as to whether this is why we're having crazy results. But I suppose for a derby more than any occasion, it's really sort of highlighted the fact that there won't be any fans inside Goodison.
Yeah, well, it was the first game back, wasn't it? When the Premier League resumed in June, and it was when we were all kind of getting used to it, obviously, with no fans again, and it was surreal. The fact that the Merseyside derby, one of our most hotly contested derbies in world football, was played out in front of no one, and that was when it kind of really hit home for me that this is going to take some getting used to. And a few months down the line, I mean, I don't know about Ian, but I'm regrettably kind of used to it now with no supporters there, and you do kind of just, it becomes the norm. But it's a massive shame, particularly for Everton fans, because they always make it a kind of bear pit for any team, really, for any big team, and particularly when Liverpool go there with 40,000 Everton fans screaming in the face of the Liverpool players, and they being kind of they're not allowed to be there tomorrow to get in the faces of Liverpool at a time when they're playing some of their best stuff for years. So it's a real shame for them. I think will that have a positive impact or a negative impact on Liverpool? It's difficult to say, because your top players in the world football kind of thrive on that. And I think Virgil van Dijk said something similar or something to that effect recently, that hearing the opposition fans boo or anything like that kind of spurs him on. So it's a different kind of environment when you're playing in front of no one. It's almost like a training game silence. But these are Premier League games where 3 points are on the line. So I'm not sure whether it's a good thing or a bad thing for Liverpool. But Klopp did say, didn't he, that the fact that the 7-2 defeat to Villa was kind of, it wasn't the main reason. He said there was no excuse for it, but that wouldn't have happened had there been 40,000 in Villa Park that night.
No, and I suppose even sort of on a wider scale than that, Matt, you look at some of the results from obviously since Project Restart happened and then this season. And one game that leaps out to me is the Chelsea game. I know it was the night, obviously, Liverpool got the Premier League title. The league had been sewn up. But even if there was fans inside, would we have seen a 5-3? It seems as though there's far more goals in the Liverpool games than what there was before, given sort of, I suppose, the intensity from the crowd that Liverpool so often rely on.
Yeah, we've said it plenty of times. I think Liverpool are a team that relies on the fans and relies on that atmosphere more than most. And as Gorst said, Virgil van Dijk has essentially admitted that over the last couple of weeks and said something very similar. I mean, loads of people have been talking about, why are we seeing, crazy games and crazy results? Is it, possibly because players are possibly switching off on different occasions are not maybe treating the games in the same way just because it's a natural reaction? If it's almost like a training game, if there's no fans there, there's no sort of intensity to it. And I suppose in a Merseyside derby, that's going to be more evident than it has been in other matches. You mentioned the Chelsea game before, and quite often they can be sort of tasty, but it was a bit of a strange one on that occasion with so many goals coming. And it's one of those where it could go one of two ways tomorrow. It could be a similar sort of thing with loads of goals and loads of defensive mistakes, if you like. And obviously, neither of the two goalkeepers have been impressing, particularly of late as well. So it's just one of those, really, where until the game kicks off, you don't quite know which way it's going to go. But yeah, I would be inclined to think that particularly on an occasion such as this, it is one of those where we will really obviously miss the supporters being there because, obviously, particularly at Goodison Park, I think it's very much a leveler between the two teams. We know that Liverpool, on paper, are the better of the two teams, but potentially with fans and home advantage and that sort of thing, that can be changed. But that's obviously something that Everton are going to have to cope with, not just tomorrow, but going forward throughout the season as well. So it'll be interesting to see which way it plays out. But look, there's nothing we can do about it for now. We don't know when fans are going to be back, unfortunately, and it's just one of those things.
Yeah, hopefully it's sooner rather than later. Okay, no fans in the stadium was one topic that Jurgen Klopp was asked about in his pre-match press conference, as was his opposite number, Carlo Ancelotti, and here's what he had to say about him.
I think that you don't need to be a manager to see that. It's pretty clear that they did some good business, and Carlo is a sensational manager, and so it was always clear when he has the time to build something, then he will do that, and have the resources to build something, then he will do that. That's what he did. So this team looks really, really good. I would like to say something different, but it's not possible.
He's a three-time European Cup-winning manager, Ian. He's come in now at Everton. He seems to have got things settled. He's brought in James Rodriguez, who's been a key player for Everton so far this season. Is he a player, and is the way that Everton have started the season something that Liverpool are going to need to make provisions for in this game?
Well, I don't think they'll make special provisions for him. I just think Liverpool just need to concentrate on their own game and improving how they played, the level that they played against Aston Villa. I think they'll know all about Everton's players. They know about, I can't remember whether they've played against Hammers before. I must admit, I don't know that off the top of my head. But they've certainly played against Allen, and they played against Doucouré as well, so they'll know that. And they played against the rest of the Everton team. So there's only, you could say there's only Hammers who perhaps they don't know as much about. Whether Klopp knows more about him, I don't know. But it'll be about Liverpool and how they want to play rather than Everton, I think. I think Liverpool will have more of the ball. I think Everton will be set up to let Liverpool have more of the ball and to play on the counter-attack and to look for set pieces. And why wouldn't they? Because that's what's proven so successful for them at the moment. The reason they've got the balance in their team and that Hammers is allowed to play the way he's allowed to play is because, and the reason Calvert-Lewin's starting to score a load of goals is because the whole team at Everton is working better than it has been for a long time, partly because the midfield, which was the weakness for a number of years, was completely overhauled, which is, they got in the players that some of them may not have been their first choice places. They wanted Højbjerg, didn't they, from the lad who went to Tottenham. But they got Allen in instead, who I'm pretty sure is probably a better player as well. So that worked out quite well for them. If you just said to an Evertonian, you're going to get James Rodriguez and Doucouré and Allen before the start of the summer, they'd have gone, we've got absolutely no chance. But it's incredible how things change. And while, as I said before, they played Tottenham at a good time. I'm sure if they played Tottenham now, it'd be a slightly different game. And they played, who was it, West Brom, Crystal Palace, and Brighton in the league. Games they probably would have thought they would have won anyway. This is going to be a big test for them, I think. And as I said before, it's about expectation with Everton. The minute that they expect something to happen, or the fans expect something to happen, that's when they struggle a little bit to cope with that. And that's why them not having any fans in the ground will help them, because they won't be, certainly inside the stadium while the game's being played, they won't be aware of that. They won't feel it, whereas they may have done had there been people in there. So going back to the fans thing, I think having no fans in there will benefit Everton in the way that it's not benefiting Liverpool at the moment.
Yeah, Paul, looking at sort of the record of Carlo Ancelotti against Jurgen Klopp, certainly obviously during his time at Napoli, not many teams or managers have been able to really get the better or really sort of get to grips with Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp, certainly during the last sort of 2 or 3 seasons now. Yet Carlo Ancelotti in the 4 meetings in the Champions League group phases between the two sides only saw his side lose in one of those games, obviously that crucial one on route to getting out of the group. And he does seem to be a manager who does seem to set his teams up well and know how to set them up against Liverpool.
He does, but I'd suggest he knows how to do that against every team. He's a world-class manager, isn't he? I think alongside Klopp and Pep Guardiola, he's probably the best in the division. And let's face it, Everton are lucky to have him. I mean, I remember when they got linked with him around December time last year, I thought he had no chance, and just thought at the time I thought Napoli were probably lucky to have him. Never mind Everton, Napoli are a team who are always fighting for the Scudetto, and they're always in the Champions League. So he's been a remarkable addition to the Premier League, and obviously he's got Everton playing well now. And he's a top manager. He's not a manager who's he's not a divisive figure in terms of other top managers in the league. You know, you think of the likes of Jose Mourinho, and I'm sure Liverpool fans would have one or two things to say about certain aspects of Pep Guardiola. But Ancelotti is someone who seems to just command universal respect, obviously, but also he's got a likability factor as well. And I think he's been great for the Premier League. And as you mentioned, he does have previous with getting good results against Liverpool. So he'll know what to expect tomorrow, no doubt. And I just think it's going to be a fascinating game and a derby that's. I mean, for a change, Everton fans are really up for it. Normally, they kind of walk into these games with trepidation, and you can understand why. They haven't won in 10 years, 22 games. Klopp hasn't lost one as Liverpool manager. I think it's 11 games in total. But tomorrow, for the first time in a long while, Everton fans will feel that they're, rightly or wrongly, that Liverpool's equal. So it's going to be a massive contest.
Funnily enough, all the Everton fans I know are all desperate for Sunday to happen. They just were like, no, this is just set up for us to lose, which tells you a lot about the way that a lot of the fans think, which is why them not being there will help Everton.
Matt, you look at the Everton team and they've got James now, they've got Richarlison playing well, Dominic Calvert-Lewin scoring goals, but he's sort of the biggest and best factor for Everton actually off the pitch in the dugout in Carlo Ancelotti.
Yeah, there's no way on earth that James Rodriguez would be playing for Everton right now if Carlo Ancelotti wasn't the manager, I don't think. So probably you could say the same thing about Alan as well. So, you know, we've said before that they've transformed their midfield from a big weakness into probably their biggest strength now. And, you know, Carlo Ancelotti is the sole reason for that happening, I think. So we know how good a manager he is. I'm the same as Paul. I was very surprised that, you know, they ended up getting him, but, you know, fair play to them. That was a fantastic appointment. Obviously, once linked with Liverpool, of course, when Jurgen Klopp was appointed, he was on the short list as well. So we know how good a manager he is. It's, you know, obviously in terms of the transfer market and that sort of thing, getting the team organised, he can have a huge impact. But look, we always come back to the point of, you know, it comes down to what the players do on the day in the Merseyside derby, and it doesn't matter how good each of the two managers are. You know, Jurgen Klopp is, you know, even better in my opinion, but it doesn't really too much matter how good the two managers are on the day. Liverpool are a better team than Everton, and as long as they perform to the level that they can do, we know what the result will be. So, look, Carlo Ancelotti has improved Everton. I think it'll be a relatively close game. I don't think, you know, we're going to see derbies like the 4-0s and things like that, whilst Carlo Ancelotti has been or will be the Everton manager. He's obviously done a fantastic job so far, but we always come back to it. Liverpool are the favourites. The pressure is a bit more on them, and as much as Carlo Ancelotti has improved them, I don't think they're going to be in the top four. Certainly, I would imagine that they'll be sort of fighting for sixth place.
That's a big shout. That's a big shout. I think Everton could easily get into the top four this season of all seasons. This season is the season where it's like the Leicester season from a couple of years ago, where Leicester, they started off really well and everyone just went, yeah, they're just going to lose. And of course, they never did. No one took them seriously. I think people will take Everton seriously this year because of who's in charge and the players they've got. But I also think, as I said before, all the other teams have already lost. We've only played 4 or 5. We have 4 games. We played 4 games. And I think the top teams are going to lose, I've said this before, 6 or 7 games. So if you've got a team winning the league on 6 or 7, a team in the top 4 can lose 8 or 9. I think Everton have got a great chance of getting into the top 4. No Europe. They don't not playing the League Cup till December now. If they stay clear of if they make sure Calvert-Lewin doesn't get injured, then they've got a really good chance.
Yeah, James Rodriguez as well, I think will be a big one if he can keep himself fit. Obviously, no Europe, as you say, is a big advantage. I just think there's probably 4 or 5 teams. Certainly, you know, you look at Liverpool, Manchester City, Chelsea. I think they're all better than Everton over the course of a season. We are only 4 games in.
Well, maybe that one is decided. Then we'll have to wait and see how that one, of course, does play out. But Ian, going to come to you next and just talk about sort of the Liverpool team selection. Gorst was sort of alluding to it before. How important then is it that Liverpool, you mentioned the factor of no fans in the ground, but the fact that Liverpool have Jordan Henderson to call upon. He does feel as though he's been a missing part to the team, albeit obviously he did start the season before having that injury against Chelsea.
Well, if he plays against Villa, there's no way it finishes 7-2. In fact, if he plays against Villa, we did a Q&A in midweek, and he said that if whoever asked the question said, if Henderson was there, do you think they'd have got through to 2-1 by half time? And I was thinking, you're probably right there, actually, because I think Liverpool were just too open. They didn't have enough energy. They didn't have a certain amount of drive in midfield. And I know we've done all of this because it was 2 weeks ago, but they missed Henderson. Henderson's fit. Henderson obviously came on a substitute on Wednesday in the England game. So he was back training yesterday along with Trent and Joe Gomez. So I think Henderson definitely starts. I actually think, we'll go on to the team in a bit, but I think there'll be quite a few changes, and I'll explain them when we get to it. But the one I think everyone will agree with is Henderson has to start. He'll lead the team out.
Paul, on Jordan Henderson, of course, he was always compared with and had that sort of unenviable task of taking the captain's armband on from Steven Gerrard. Whilst he might not be talismanic in terms of coming up with late goals in big games like Steven Gerrard did, has he almost sort of assumed a similar talismanic role within this squad of being the leader and so evidently being a missing cog when he isn't there?
Yeah, I definitely think you notice him more when he's not there, because he's the one who sets the tempo, isn't he? He's the communicator, the leader, the one who's always basically demanding that the standards stay as high as they can be, can't they? And when you've got players in the Liverpool squad, players in the Liverpool team, when you've got someone who's kind of on it then non-stop, relentlessly in their ear, telling them to make sure that they're on it, and that means that they're able to kind of perform at the level that they should do, which is why Liverpool are such a good team. I think I do think that the more games he misses, the more of a miss he is. That might sound a little bit obvious, but it's only when he's not playing you think Liverpool look like they're missing a little bit of a half a yard there, and he sets the tempo. He's always snapping into the tackles, and his determination to be the winner on the day is probably greater than anyone else on the pitch. So he's such a vital player for Liverpool, isn't he? And he's not someone who points as the first name on the team sheet, even though he's obviously the captain, but just by virtue of him setting those standards, which everyone else has adhered to for a good while now, then if he's fit, he absolutely has to play, even for a midfield that's as packed full of options as Jurgen Klopp's is.
Yeah, I suppose what backs that up, Matt, is the fact that since that defeat to Man City in January 2019, of the 4 defeats in the league Liverpool have had since then, Henderson's missed 3 of those. He's only been involved in one of them, the defeat to Man City during Project Restart of the Etihad last season.
Yeah, we know how important he is. It's not just obviously his leadership and that sort of thing. It's about dictating the tempo, knowing just when to put your foot on the ball and slow the game down for a little while. And it's just that experience, isn't it? I think actually there's a good chance that James Milner might play as well tomorrow. I think it wouldn't be a massive shock if both of those two played. Obviously, Milner not played any football during the international break. He'd be fresh, he'd be fit. And I think it's sort of for similar reasons to Jordan Henderson, really, particularly in a game that could be a fairly frantic one in a Merseyside derby. I just think it makes so much sense. But with Jordan Henderson, it's just one of those, isn't it? As Gorsty says, you realise just how much he does for this Liverpool team when he's not there. The longer and the more consistent that he is there, you sort of start at the beginning realising it, and the longer it goes on, the more you sort of forget the influence that he has. But yeah, for me, it's 100% certain that he will start tomorrow, and you wouldn't bet against him having a significant impact as well, because, as you say, the very rare occasions that Liverpool do drop points, he tends to be the sort of reason for that being the case in terms of him not being there. So, yeah, for Jurgen Klopp, I'm sure there's no doubt that he will start tomorrow, and I'm sure that we've said how good Everton's midfield are and how much of a strength that is for them. It's going to be probably where the game is won, and I think for Jordan Henderson to be in there, that will be a huge boost for Liverpool, but also something for the Everton players to look at and not be fearful of necessarily, but I'm sure it would have been a boost for them had he not been back and fit for this one.
Yeah, so we'll get into the team selection shortly because it feels as though it's going to be quite a lengthy chat we're going to have on deciding who may well fit into Jurgen Klopp's team for this Merseyside derby. But before we do that, it is the domestic transfer deadline today. And Gorsty, come to you with this. A few names, of course, floating about. Harry Wilson off to the Championship on loan, and then the likes of Herbie, Kane, and even Harvey Elliott as well. His name's been bandied about today.
Yeah, Harvey Elliott agreed to go to Blackburn Rovers. It's one I didn't see coming, if I'm honest. I thought Liverpool were going to keep hold of him, because I know Liverpool are very selective over who they kind of send on loan, and the proposals behind those are always very stringently checked and so on. But it does make sense the way you think about it. Liverpool's Carabao Cup exits has dwindled the opportunities for a lot of players, to be honest, and Harry Wilson is included in that. At a time when Xherdan Shaqiri's decided to stay, and Liverpool obviously brought in Diogo Jota, you've still got Divock Origi on the books, and then obviously the front three. So, Elliott was very unlikely to get senior minutes until January at the very earliest in the FA Cup, when that could quite feasibly just be one game if Liverpool get beat, or one or two if they don't really embark on a bit of a cup run. So I think Liverpool were mindful of sending him on loan too early, and he's still only 17, but it's a great chance for him to gain some experience as a senior player in a championship, which is very difficult, very tough and physical, and there are never any favourites in a championship game. So I think ultimately it could be a very wise move for the long-term development of Harry Wilson, and obviously for Harvey Elliott. And obviously Harry Wilson's a little bit of a different case, because we know Liverpool were looking to kind of offload him in a permanent deal. Haven't been able to do that, but they've accepted a loan deal from Cardiff, because I think he was keen to go back to Wales. Obviously Cardiff and Swansea were the two who were leading the chase. Liverpool spoke to him and his agents when he got back from Wales earlier this week. And Liverpool probably see, well, I know that they see it as a chance to put him in the shop window almost, rather than playing 23s football, where he's going to be several levels above that, and he's not going to do much for potential shooters to watch him in action. So I think that's a good move for all parties as well.
Yeah, no, so we will obviously be keeping an eye certainly on Harvey Elliott and how he gets on at Blackburn Rovers. Let's get into our team selections then. Doyle, come to you first. Goalkeeper, seems as though there's probably one man for the jersey, albeit Jurgen Klopp did say that Alisson Becker is progressing well, and I suppose goalkeeper for both teams in this game could be a crucial position.
Well, goalkeeper's always a crucial position, but I know exactly what you're saying. It's funny, isn't it? Because Adrian, he made a mistake with the first goal, but afterwards Klopp was saying, look, yeah, it was his fault, but it wasn't his fault for the other six. It was up to the other players to react a bit better than they did. And I think, it's just interesting, because you look at Pickford, and he's the England goalkeeper. Probably plays better for England than he does for Everton. Everton at the top of the league, but they conceded. What was it? They conceded 2 against West Brom. They conceded a couple against Fleetwood. Was it in the Carabao Cup? So they haven't been keeping that many clean sheets, to be honest. So, and quite a few of the goals have been down to him. I think it was the Brighton game. He dropped one, didn't he? He dropped one. Did I finish 4-2 that game? Or did I just dream that? Or was it 4-2 in the end? Yeah. So there you go, another 2 goals. So, I mean, has Adrian been treated harshly? It's hard to say. He's not Alisson Becker, but then who is? So it's a bit much asking him to come in and play exactly like him. But I would be amazed if they haven't been working on his kicking and his distribution during the 2 weeks since the Aston Villa game, because that's obviously a weak point. And Liverpool's defenders have to show a bit more confidence in him. I mean, that's the first league game he's ever played for Liverpool where they haven't won. I think was it 9 or 10 last season where he either started or came on because of the sendings off or injury to Alisson Becker. So he played his part at this time last year of Liverpool having a great start to the season, which led to the title. So I don't think people should be, too harsh. But you know what it's like. You've seen people on social media, they're saying this, that, and the other about Adrian. There's still people even now just saying that Liverpool should be signing another goalkeeper. It's like, well, why sign Jack Butland when he's someone who isn't playing well for Stoke? How's that going to work? What's the point in that? And, well, there's no other option, is it? Adrian has to play for Everton. Liverpool just have to do to Everton what Everton will be looking to do to Liverpool, and that's capitalise on a goalkeeper who apparently has lost a bit of confidence with the rest of his team. So
put the ball in the mixer, lads. Put the ball in the mixer. Yeah, that's it. Pin it on the keeper. Matt, do you see this one finishing goalless with the 2 goalkeepers that are going to be in net for this one?
I don't, but then I probably wouldn't have predicted 0-0 for the last 3 of the Merseyside derbies at Goodison either. So we'll have to see how it goes. But I think, there should be there should be goals for both teams. I think just, in terms of Adrian, there was never any doubt really that, Jurgen Klopp was happy to keep hold of him. And, as much as there's been speculation about Butland, there was a couple of other goalkeepers and things named. I think, people, particularly with Butland, they have a sort of idea of him being at his peak. He had a good, 3 or 4 months, one season about 4 years ago. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he is now the same goalkeeper that he was then. So it's one of those where, Liverpool fans will see Adrian every single week. They probably haven't seen Jack Butland since, Stoke City were in the Premier League. And that was a little while ago now. So look, Adrian is going to be Liverpool's goalkeeper for the next couple of weeks at least. But I suppose that the good news was that Jurgen Klopp did say today that Alisson was making good progress and possibly was ahead of schedule on his return.
Yeah, I don't know if Matt's morphed into Theo Squires. Shots being fired in all directions there, wasn't he? Yeah, he's taking him down. Gorst, come to you on the defence. You did mention Matip before. How would you line up the back four?
I don't know. I don't know whether I'd bring Matip back in instead of Gomez. Yeah, do you know what? I think I will. I think he's had a week of training, Matip. So I think he'll be ready more than Gomez will be after coming on the back of minutes here and there for England. So I'm going to go with Matip and Van Dijk, and then obviously Robertson and Trent and Adrian in goal.
What's your take on that, Doyle?
Trent's going to play because he can play for a team who actually wants to play him, as opposed to England, who seem to want to play just about every other player ahead of him. Surprised I didn't get called up actually to play in front of him. But it was off, that's why I couldn't play. So Trent's playing right back, Robertson left back, who obviously didn't play for Scotland in midweek because he was suspended, so that's good. We said Adrian in goal, Van Dijk. Right, centre back is interesting because I've got it down to 3 because I think Fabinho is in line as well. I think Fabinho could play centre back. So you've got Fabinho, Gomez, and Matip. And if we were 1 week down the line, I'd say Matip plays. The only thing that's making me think Matip doesn't play is because, while Gorst said he's been training for a week, he hasn't played since June, has he? When he got stood on, was it Richarlison who stood on his foot? It was, wasn't it? That's how he got injured. Yeah. Oh, he's played since then, hasn't he? Did he play since then?
Yeah, he played against Leeds.
Yeah, that's right. Come on, against Leeds. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, ignore me then. Yeah, Matip's playing. Yeah, right. There you go. Maybe mine. Matip's playing. Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? My initial thoughts, given the midfield that I want to pick, is that I'm going to pick Fabinho. The only thing that is stopping me is that he will have come back from South America relatively late, won't he? So it's a difficult one. I'm going to go with Fabinho, and I'm going to save Joel Matip for the Champions League on Wednesday night.
I just feel sorry for Ian Doyle that we're all working from home because Gareth Southgate's invitation to the England squad went into the desk. It's sitting on Joe Rimmer's desk and never got seen. Anyway, let's move on into the midfield. Doyle, I'll come back to you for this. 3-man midfield?
3-man midfield, and I actually think it's quite easy because I think there's 2 players who are definitely playing, and that's Thiago and Milner, because they'll have been working on it all week at Melwood. And as we've said before, Henderson has to come in. Keita's not involved. Wijnaldum's played a lot of football. I think he'll play in midweek. So I definitely think it's going to be Milner. I'd be amazed if Milner doesn't start. And we know that Henderson is almost certain to start. And I think if you bought Thiago and he's only played 45 minutes so far, why not play him? So I think it'll be those 3.
There's an empty Goodison as well, Gorsty, play into Thiago's hands as well, because if it was a full raucous Everton, it might be something he's not experienced before, but an empty Goodison might just be sort of the ideal platform for him.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but I think this is a player who's played for Bayern Munich and Barcelona and won 2 Champions Leagues, so I don't think, the signing of Goodison is going to strike fear into his heart, if I'm honest. But yeah, as I say, I was a little bit minded of not playing him at the start of the week, but as the week's worn on, I'm getting a little bit more excited seeing him back in training, and I think stick him in there with the captain. And then the third one is a difficult one, isn't it? So I think I'm going to defer to Doyley's wisdom and go with James Milner myself.
And Matt, again, yourself for the midfield. You did mention Milner earlier on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Thiago and Jordan Henderson are both pretty much certainties. I think if both of those are fit, they get into Liverpool's first choice 11, which is what you would pick for a game like this. So it's, again, just a choice really for the third one. And James Milner, the fact that he's not gone away, the fact that he will have been training for 5 days now since Thiago came back, I just think it makes sense for him to come in. So, yeah, for me as well, Thiago at the base and then Milner and Henderson either side of him.
So from the result at Aston Villa, then complete change in the midfield. Of course, Keita isn't available for the game for Liverpool, but no Wijnaldum and obviously no Fabinho then either. Let's then look at the front line then. Gorst, I'll come to you for the forward three. A lot of talk at the moment around Roberto Firmino. Does he start this one?
Again, it's another really difficult one, isn't it? I had the chance to speak to Jamie Carragher earlier this week, and he was saying no chance he'd start Firmino because he's not going to get back until the Thursday night. He's going to have one training session, and he made the point to the fact that it's a Saturday lunchtime kickoff, just kind of plays havoc with everything. So he wouldn't be starting Firmino, but I know he hasn't had a great season so far. But as Doyle mentions, the front three don't ever play against Everton. Time and again, Everton seem to, at the skin of the teeth, seem to get away with having to play this front three at full throttle. And I think sooner or later that they're going to have to be thrown together and really, see what they can do against Everton. So as much as I can see the argument against it, I'd say, yeah, go in there. And if you're only playing an hour, go and see what you can do and really get your season up and running.
I have to say, though, Matt, Divock Origi does like the taste of the Toffees backline. He normally does the business. No room for Divock Origi here?
No, there's no room for Divock Origi, but for me, there's no Roberto Firmino either. I think it makes sense to sort of take him out off the back of the international break, and I've been looking for an opportunity to bring Takumi Minamino in, and this, I think, for me would be it. I think you would play him. I know Diogo Jota did very well for Portugal this week. I think, what did he get? A goal and a couple of assists, something like that. So there is the opportunity potentially to bring him in and possibly play Mane through the middle. But I think for me, Minamino had a brilliant pre-season. He's been a little bit hard done by since then. So I would go with Minamino in the sort of Roberto Firmino role and potentially bring on Firmino for the last half an hour or so.
And Doyle, what's your take on the front three?
Well, again, using the basis that they'll have been training at Melwood all week, Salah and Mane are definitely starting. And having said that, Liverpool, as Gorsty said, never play with the front three. I'm still not going to play with the front three. But I'm not going to go Minamino. I think I'm going to go with the Everton fan, Diogo Jota, of course, who could join the rest of them. Who is it? Steve McManaman, Robbie Fowler, Ian Rush, Michael Owen, all of the people who grew up supporting Everton. I'm not sure whether he's quite in the same mould of an Everton fan as those, I must admit. But anyway, he scored 2 goals in midweek. And I say Firmino was actually back training, wasn't he, with Fabinho? They were there on Thursday. They must have got back quite early. Come back straight away. I think the Klopp mentioned that they flew on a... Liverpool looked to get private planes for most of their players who were out on international duty. So I'm assuming the 2 Brazilian lads came back on that, which is why they were back in time to do training on Thursday afternoon. But having said that, don't think Firmino starts. I think it'll be Salah on the right, Jota on the left, and Mane down the middle, which is probably something Everton aren't expecting. And I'm pretty sure that almost every player who's the senior players who have been training this week will be starting that game then. So I think that's something that you have to look at.
Yeah, certainly. Let's do our match predictions then before we do get off. And Matt, come to you first for a score prediction.
Yeah, I said before it would either be loads of goals or no goals. I'm going to go, I think, for 3-2 to Liverpool.
Oh, okay, that's quite bold. Paul, come to you.
I'm reluctant to say 0-0 because I'm sick of them at Goodison Park, to be honest. 2-0 to Liverpool.
2-0 to Liverpool. Well, Jurgen Klopp's only win, of course, at Goodison Park was 1-0. Mane scored. He's going to play through the middle for you, Ian Doyle. What's the score going to be?
Well, given the fact that since lockdown and a comeback, I've seen a 5-3, 2 7-2s and a 4-3. 26 all, do you think? Or no, I think... I'm going to go with the good old Derby scoreline of 1-1.
1-1 then at Goodison Park. We'll have to wait and see if that is how it does play out. Make sure you keep across the Liverpool Echo for all of our Derby Day content, as well as the Blood Red channel, whether that be podcasts or our dedicated YouTube channel. But from myself, Guy Clarke, Matt Addison, Paul Gorst and Ian Doyle, thanks for joining us here on the Blood Red podcast. It's bye for now.